All right, guys, making another one here. This is another video that I've been thinking about for a while. Yeah, by the way, if you guys are new or returning subscribers, this is the new direction for my channel. So hope you guys like this going forward. Like say all the time, if you're new, subscribe, hit the like button, really helps a lot. And if you're returning and planning on staying, thank you so much. I appreciate it for the support as well. As this is not going to be primarily a Philadelphia Eagles channel anymore. It's going to be more of a philosophical thoughts type channel, I guess. I haven't really decided exactly what to call it yet. I don't want to use like rambling channel, but you know, it could even be that, about various topics. But anyway, this video, this is something I've been thinking about for quite a while, just as modernity sets in, right? As we live in a post-coof world, right? Post-stabby world. Sorry, I got something in my teeth there. And the topic is how to cope, I guess, is what I've been thinking about, like how to cope. I released a video before called "What Have I Been Doing Since 2020," and kind of went over a lot of that stuff. And that was a big part of it. I didn't really get into it in that video, but a big part of what I was doing during that time was essentially learning how to cope with this world that we live in. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you know, a world with, you know, HR department jobs, a world where we just live in immense usury, like the financial systems don't make any sense. A world where you go to a job if you can find a job, and you basically trade your time for monopoly money, funny money. I don't know what else to describe it at this point. You know, I talked about it in one of my other videos as well about how in the last like 3-4 years, 80% of the money in circulation was printed in just the last 4 years. In the history of the country is what I'm getting at. So that's why I'm using post-COVID. It's almost like this is the crisis that will not be recovered from without some kind of like Great Depression level event. And I just been thinking about that for years, of like how am I going to cope, you know? And yeah, there's been a lot of different ways that I've learned to cope. One big one for me is just I started reading books. I never really was a reader. You know, I used to read like fiction, and you know, in hindsight, very cringe. I used to read like slop, is what I like to call these things. Like the Witcher series, and I don't know. Like I still play video games and stuff on occasion, but I'm pretty much like a non-fiction consumer now, other than movies occasionally as well. But like shows, movies, like anything modern now, it's absolute garbage. You know, they're like movies like Alien Romulus or Gladiator 2, like that just barely came out last. Like they were so bad. I'm just like, if this is the future of, you know, they just released like a Predator trailer and it just looked awful. Like if this is the future of entertainment, like it's kind of a relief in a way, because it's like I can just completely check out of that, which is kind of what I did with the Eagles in 2020. Which is why I just don't really care to make those videos anymore, because you know, you just start checking out the more you learn about how dire the situation, you know, actually is. And I don't have any like great skills. You know, I worked white collar for almost 10 years. I went to college like the rest of the millennials did. You know, got a completely pointless degree. It's hanging up on the wall right up there. So it's just kind of like, well, what's going to happen? You know, and I've been watching lots of different things. There's like the MGTOW, which, I'm kind of living a MGTOW life. Partially willingly, partially unwillingly. Like I could basically I could go out and I could get a woman. I'm pretty sure if I really wanted to, but the amount of just hurdles that you have to overcome nowadays just to make that basic thing happen seems insurmountable, mostly with the way women's brains are calibrated right now. Now, if we enter like a Great Depression style scenario and like reality really sets in, like the toilets won't flush, planes literally falling out of the sky. We've actually already seen some of that this year. Like the moment Trump got in, all of a sudden you see all these like helicopters and planes crashing out of the skies. Very, very crazy. The competency crisis is very real, is what I'm getting at. And there's all these talks of like how AI is going to solve this, and I'm very doubtful with a lot of that. I think really, yeah, we're in for some immense pain going forward. And so, yeah, like how do you cope with that, right? And I've been at a loss, guys, I'll be honest. Like the last year or so, I kind of worked with my friend doing a lot of like construction type stuff. And that stuff is it felt more useful to learn than what I did in the white collar world. But you could go into the trades, but I'm pretty old now. I'm squarely in the middle of that millennial generation. So like we're all in our 30s, and so I'm definitely starting to feel like I would like to go out and do construction type stuff, but I'm just starting to feel like that's not going to be as much of an option for me. But who knows? I'm still kind of weighing those things out. That's part of the cope as well. I'm trying to figure out how to cope with our reality, for one, right? Like that's another thing too, is like this world is really not built for men at all. The whole goal of modernity, you could say, is to quash masculinity. That's been like the project. That's pretty much been laid bare at this point, in my opinion. Like the entire goal of the society is to just crush masculinity. Right? Like you hear all this talk about the patriarchy. I've read so much history at this point. I can't think of a single time where women were treated like men are treated now. Because even if women were oppressed or whatever in the past, like men never. You would have like certain men that would treat men or women a certain way, but the mass majority of men never looked at women as like just purely disposable. And that's kind of what we've learned with modernity, right? Like when you switch to, there's this term called the longhouse. I'd recommend you guys look that up, but I'll kind of like try to explain it. It's just basically this theory that when you get a society where you just put women in all the positions of power, right? And this is like everything. This can be like politics, teachers. That's a big one. A lot of people don't talk about is female teachers are like the majority of teachers now, which basically necessitates that almost anyone that goes through public school is going to experience some form of the longhouse. Another term for this is the nanny state. That one might make a lot more sense to a lot of you guys. And again, we saw all this in COVID. It's essentially the Karen meme, which I don't really love the Karen meme, but because the Karen meme can be good or bad. There's actually times where it's good for women to act like that, but with modernity, it's kind of it's taken like women's instincts that are very good in the home, projected them onto society, and it's basically turned us all into adult eternal children. It's the best way. I'm guilty of this myself. We're all guilty. I'm not trying to like sit on a high horse here and pretend like I'm above all this. I'm just observing it is all it is. And that's part of that's a big part of the cope is just realizing that you live in this longhouse society that doesn't care about men at all. I mean, there's this concept called the family wage. Like a lot of people don't even know about this. I learned about this listening to E. Michael Jones a couple weeks ago. and he wrote a book called Barren Metal, which I have not read. It's like a crazy long book, like 1,400 pages or something is what I've been hearing, and I just don't have the money to buy a ton of books right now. New books, I should say. I've got a ton of books, but there's still a lot I need to get, but I just don't have the money to do that right now. Which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this channel as well. I'll just be honest about that. I'd like to grow the channel a little bit. So yeah, again, this is Jigsaw. If you guys like this, if you're new, subscribe, like the video, really helps. And yeah, if you're a returning viewer, do it as well. And yeah, I appreciate it. Appreciate the support. But yeah, there's this book called Barren Metal by E. Michael Jones, and he kind of talks about, the book apparently is just really a massive like economics book, like goes over everything. So one day I will read that book because I've read Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics. But this goes over like E. Michael Jones is great. If you guys don't know who he is, like look him up. But this goes over like civilizationally why these things are the way they are, like where concepts like usury come from. Things like that. But to get to that'll probably be for like another video. To get to like the family wage concept, as part of like this cope theme for this video, is essentially the family wage was that it was, in the past it was God, man, woman, child. And you say something like that now because of all the stupid propagandistic feminism that everyone's infected with, and they just see that like, oh, the man's above the woman, and me, right? You just get these screechers. I get this with my own friend group. Like I just say basic things like that, and it's like immediately I'm a evil white man. I get that a lot actually nowadays. A straight white man, something like that. Any variation of these things, right? As if that's such a horrible thing. Again, further proving my thesis that, not really my thesis, a lot of people know this now, but the world just doesn't care about men. But I digress. The family wage basically allowed for civilization to continue, just to kind of cut to the chase, because when you have it in that structure, God, man, woman, child, that is the ideal order, you could say, of how everything's supposed to run. Because then the man can go out and make the living, and he doesn't have to compete. All he has to do is compete with other men. When men and women compete like this, you get modernity. You get, fake email jobs. You get girl bossing in all the work environments, right? You get this crazy welfare state. You get the epidemic literally of just single motherhood. And, again, kids, this is the longhouse. This is the nanny state. This is the concept, is that you're just completely run by women. But women are not designed for this. They're not. I always say this too, like why I don't want women in politics. I think that, I don't know if I can like say this, but we should repeal a certain amendment. I'll just put it that way, right? Because I always say politics is the domain of war, and war is the domain of men. So it's just something to always remember. Like women are not designed for war. That's what politics is, right? So when you put things in there for women to participate or what, I don't even know what it is. I've even asked women this, like the ones that say they'd like to vote. It's like, well, what have you voted for? Like, if you look at the history of women voting, which is like barely 100 years at this point. I'd have to look at the exact dates, but I think it was like literally 1920, and the first issue that women ever voted on was prohibition, which you can go down that rabbit hole, right? Prohibition led to illegal bootlegging, which led to massive amounts of crime families making massive amounts of money for decades. The creation of the FBI to combat said things, like all this cascading effect, like the entire city of Las Vegas, which is based on gambling and usury, created as a dump off for all of this money after the prohibition was ended, right? Like, this is what I mean. Like, I always ask them, like, well, what are you voting for? And I'm not even really a believer in voting at all to begin with. I would much rather live in some form of monarchy than democracy anyway. That'd just be a lot easier for everyone. If we followed the family wage structure that I just discussed, everything would work much better. But yeah, essentially what women vote for, they've already had graphs on this. It's not even controversial to say women tend to vote more socialist, men tend to vote more conservative. So it's like this sick game. This video is supposed to be about cope, and I'm going on like another feminist rant, but I'll get to the point. It's like this sick game that they've decided, or that they've decided to create, right? Whereas they want the women in the workforce because it increases the GDP, right? Green line go up. But also, it's a way of buying votes, because that's also what democracy is. You're just buying votes. I've actually worked in politics, so like I know exactly how this works directly. Like, I was campaigning for candidates that I didn't even I knew like their name and everything, but I had no clue who they really were. I mean, I just had this like flyer that said like, oh, they're pro this, they're pro that, they're anti this, anti that. So it was just a giant it was sales essentially, and that's all this maybe everything in life is sales, I don't know, but that's all this ever was. It was about putting women in the workforce, so for one, you could lower. I don't know what their ultimate goal is. I think they also wanted to lower birth rates. Like that's a big thing as well. Sometimes it's hard for me to comprehend that. It's like they really wanted to destroy, because if you destroy the birth rates, you've destroyed like any future your country has to continue goes out the window if you start doing things like that. But there's many, yeah. So they wanted to ruin the birth rates. They wanted to, raise taxes, because again, when women vote, they tend to vote socialist. What does that mean? That means that you increase the size of the welfare state, which means more entitlements, right? This combined with like the civil rights era, more entitlements, more taxes, just further chipping away at the man's ability to have any meaningful impact in his own family's life. You read those stories, like this is really true. Like my dad talks about this. Just the generation right after World War, or during World War II, the greatest generation, those guys could work as a janitor. My dad's dad, he worked as a billboard painter, and he was able to have a house with 3 to 4 bedrooms. I think my dad showed me the house he grew up in like 10 years ago when we went on a road trip. But I can't remember if it was at least 3 bedrooms. It was like a decent sized house. It was like as big as the one I'm in right now. He could afford that. He could have his wife, my dad's mother, stay at home. And then my dad, my brother, and his 2 sisters. So if that's a 4-kid household, he could pay for all of that on a billboard painting job. It's not even possible now. You could do it, but again, though, it's the women. The women want to live super luxurious lifestyles now. Like theoretically, you could, if you could get the woman's brain to get on that wavelength. I think it's still possible to live on one income, but you'd have to go live in you'd have to basically go live like an Amish person. It's the only way to do it now. Which a lot of people should be doing. Again, this goes back to the cope. I think part of coping is you should start lowering your standard of living if you can, but it's not as hard as you think. I basically lived almost an entire year on just about $10,000. So it's completely possible if you really figure out how to lower your standard, but that's kind of beside the point as well. But yeah, I laid all that out because now I have to kind of establish like how do you cope with this as a man, because I've just been watching a lot of YouTube, different MGTOW channels. A lot of women are becoming aware of this too, which is refreshing, of just like how how shit on men are essentially. But the big thing I just don't see a lot is like just how do you kind of cope with this, and everybody kind of picks their camps, right? Like I've talked about dialectics before on here, but everybody kind of picks their camps. You know, you get the MGTOW guys, you get like the Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh guys. Like I'll just suck it up, and those guys are irrelevant in my opinion because that advice is so outdated. Like you can't just expect a man to go out and because that's another thing is that came with all this feminism is no fault divorce. That's really that's what's held me back is I've been on the cusp with a lot of girls and I'm just like, but there's that chance, man. It's like my worst nightmare to think about losing my family. If I had one, it would just be like, I don't know how I'd cope with that. That's like a road I just never want to go down. So that's always something I think about is like the no fault divorce has been huge as well. They can just divorce for no reason and take half your wealth, sometimes more. You know, a lot of women do that now. They just have sex with a guy and then he's on the hook. And yeah, I mean, I'm not defending the men either. I've long advocated I think men should also not be out just having sex with women either, because the men do perpetuate it. You know, it's not as bad obviously, but I'm digressing again. I'm making this video about feminism. I don't know why that wasn't. I've got plenty of ideas for videos for feminism. I'm a little bit tired right now. That's probably why. It's been a long day. I'm just kind of making this video before I kind of relax and, you know, play something or read something. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet after this video, but yeah, I'm just thinking. That's just what I was driving back home and I was just thinking about life, and you know, I'm not really like discontent. That's what's weird. Like there's, again, I'm seeing a lot of channels where like just a lot of guys are really discouraged, like really depressed, which, you know, I totally understand. I'm not like crapping on those guys. I'm just saying like I don't feel that for some reason. I'm very you know, I think about it all the time. Like, what if I just never get married? What if I never have kids? You know, it should bother me more, but it just doesn't. I think in a way it's because I've kind of accepted what this time is. Like, I'm not saying things won't get better, but if you study like Marxism or what got us here, a lot of this stuff was started like before World War I, guys. Like, these are generational projects that were started. And the long march through the institutions is what they call it. These events that we're now experiencing, we're kind of, I don't know if we're even at the end of it. We might be at like the beginning of it before it crumbles. I've always tried to figure out like what stage of this are we at, but all this Huxley like Brave New World that we live in was set in motion hundreds of years, like probably since like the 1880s. I always like to pin it on Darwinism. I think the Darwinist philosophy really, like once people, central planners and government officials, people started thinking about people as like monkeys essentially. And then this was also around the time when like monarchies were falling and democracies were coming up. So I always like to pin it there. Like the beginning of modernity started with Darwinism, which is around 1880. You know, this is also when Nietzsche started observing, you know, I don't agree with Nietzsche's outcomes, but he started observing basically the death of God as a phenomenon, which that just means people are now entering a more logical, right? I say this because I don't believe any of this. I think this is all cope in and of itself, thinking that you can, you know, outsmart God. But yeah, to get back to my original, you know, thought track there, is that this was all set in motion long before, like a lot of us were born right into this, you know. I was born in the late 80s. Yeah, I even think back, I was like, so I was born basically right when the Soviet Union collapsed. So I don't know anything. I don't even know what the Cold War did. I don't know anything about that. All I can do is read about these things. I didn't experience it. So all you can do is read about that stuff. But the more you read, you realize like this has been going on. I mean, the boomers themselves, they were one of the most psyoped generations in history. We were too, but we have like the internet, and you know, there's like more tools for us to break out of it, I guess you could say. But the boomers just had no choice because they were already kind of living in the comforts of what the Second World War provided, you know, the spoils of war, you could say. But at the same time, they were being fed all this propaganda that was essentially being set up to affect us quite a bit more than them. So they were just kind of, you know, I cut them some slack. I'm not like a boomer hater, but they're also not meant to be taken very seriously in a lot of their opinions because they're just so brainwashed. But I don't know. That's kind of the video. I'm kind of rambling at this point. Maybe I won't call this video the cope. I don't know what I'll call it, but maybe I'll actually make a video of. But I mean, the ways that I cope is I just one of the ways I cope, I guess, to really get to the point, and I don't see a lot of people saying this, is that I like to confront the problem head on. So the way that I've learned to cope with this is like, I remember when COVID was starting, it was like, okay, and I've kind of always been like this. Like I always kind of try to put the end result before the current. So I always like to think of like, if I do this, this will happen. And this could be why I'm not so like depressed about a lot of things, because you know, it's like when you recognize that you make choices in your life, there are things that you can choose, and then there are things that are thrust upon you, right? Like I've talked about epochs in time before on this channel, where a lot, like I just kind of talked about that now, right? Like I was born right after, like basically right as the Soviet Union was collapsing. So like that's my circumstances. I'm born post Cold War, right in the 90s, you know, 10 years of prosperity, right? They called it the end of history too. That's another thing. Our generation, we were supposed to be the last generation, right? They changed us from Gen Y to millennials for a reason. We're supposed to be the last generation because we've solved all the problems, right? We've gotten to the end of history, and now it's nothing but greatness from here. So all that propaganda was thrust on us. So that's what I mean by epoch. You're born in your set period of time, and you have to kind of you have to learn to cope with that, because you can change things, but I mean, you as one person, you won't change things. And when change happens, it happens rather slowly. Like the way I like to see it is it happens slowly, and then all at once. But you never know when the then all at once is. So you just have to kind of keep that in mind. So yeah, that's the way I cope, is I try to learn about things head on. Again, COVID's a great example. I was like, okay, I'm going to learn about what this is not. You know, everyone's going to be afraid because like fear is one of the biggest motivators of human beings. That's how they get you to do almost anything, is fear. But that's just my philosophy, is you focus on it head on. You kind of basically deal with what you can and like accept what you can't, and just go from there. And so yeah, that's kind of the video here, guys. I'll probably still, I'm thinking about, I'll still call it how to cope, because I think I gave you guys a good prescription there. But yeah, this is Jigsaw. This is the new direction of the channel. If you guys like this, please subscribe, please like. We'll be kind of going on a journey here. I think, I'm just going to talk about many topics. I've thought about covering news articles to see what people talk about as well, just to kind of, you know, and it's going to be from a very conservative lens. I'll just be honest. That's just how I think. I've always kind of been that way. So I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, that's the video, guys. I'll talk to you later.